I think it's because when they come up, because it's a fish and not a mouse, like the mouse, they just pull them under. This one, because it's a fish, I truly think they try and shock it with a swipe first, you know, with their face and knock it out, and then they come back around for the come. The problem is you got the no-no point down there now. So when he goes for it, he gets a face full of aki. With fly fishing, it's not really the bait that catches the fish. It's really the angler, because all we're doing is giving life to chicken and deer. Streamer fishing is tough. It is the most advanced technique I teach in my boat. It is something that is never really mastered so much as improving upon all the time. This is a night fly. We have tied this in some smaller trout spay variations to kind of mimic the sculpin, which it really does well with these little deer wedges. That head relative to the body width and stature and all that, it's just very sculpin-y. The backstory on a pattern like this comes from fishing a place, as many of you have heard, the White River in Arkansas, where stream browns are old enough to vote and have just about as much sense as a 21-year-old. But it's not that we didn't catch fish on mice. It's just we knew how many fish were feeding subsurface that we were not getting to go. That bothered us. And we didn't want to start dredging around streamers in the middle of the night, because that's kind of a little repetitious and boring. And mouse fishing kind of always limited you to kind of whatever was willing to come to the surface, which was plenty. I mean, the biggest one that I ever got on that river in the dark was still on a mouse in the middle of the night. But I tell you, as soon as we started getting into this shank stuff, where we were tying these like kind of glorified muddlers or whatnot, we really started seeing just how many fish were probably paying attention to us that we were really just never aware of. And the beauty of this, for many of those that fish night fishing and have a problem keeping that composure in that moment where the fish actually rises for a surface fly, the nice thing about the Beetlejuice is it is a subsurface fly. And even though you're bumping the surface, you're never really on the surface. The wedge always kind of keeps you down below. What we have here is an octopus, number 1. Again, you can size this down appropriately for anything, especially if you're getting into trout spay. This whole pattern platform kind of plays. Shrink it, smaller hook, smaller shank, less material, less head, etc. We're going to take really the bottom end of the saddle feathers, which are the part of the feather that we use least of on those nice whiting saddles. And we want this thing only as long as that hook. We don't want it to really come off the back, because we've got this hook pointed down so it's naughty. And the beautiful thing about fishing that style is, unlike if I were fishing that close to the bottom, that would be way naughty to a point where you'd be hanging up on the bottom. The way we've got it set up here is it's down because we're never near the bottom. We're right below the surface. So all those little sneaky fish that come up under and give you the little kiss and tells, but they don't finish the deal, that hook's down there to kind of give them the what for. So that body blower bump that fish are so used to doing in the dark, it costs them with this. So we leave that hook down, and we're going to tie a wedge style. Now, my favorite way to fish this pattern isn't single-handed. It's on a two-handed rod, 12.5 feet, poly leader, with a Scandi dry line. And we're talking probably 12 feet of leader, probably 13 really. And you bomb this thing out here with a stack, which engages that wed and tips it down, and it walks this bug in such a way where it dips down, bumps the surface, falls back. And you're doing all this simply with a stack of the line, or simply keeping a general tension on the line. That'll allow that to kind of traction. Having the hook in place in subsurface allows the person to feel the take instead of hear it. And that in turn leads to more fish in hand. We call it the pucker. And we call it pucker as a guide because when I'm sitting in the middle seat of the boat and you get a nibble in the dark or the daylight, I see your waders kind of pucker. They kind of get tight. And if you can control your pucker, you'll control your hook set. And if you don't, then I'm usually ducking your fly as it goes over the boat. So with this fly, whenever I have somebody that's turned several fish with a mouse and just can't get rid of that pucker, and which is just another way of saying buck fever with a fly rod, then you give them one of these things and they may hear the kiss and the bumps and all that, but they're not going to get that big, you know, shoebox in the water sound where, you know, that's not going to give them a reason to kind of pucker out of the gate there. So the first few steps here, you can kind of see we've got our tail in here, which is just kind of a signal rudder for the head. And then we've got a little bit of flash here just to kind of keep this erect. First set of rubber legs here. And why not purple? Because this is, you should have fun with this pattern, as I have yet to find a color that didn't work. Again, the action and the profile of this from the underside is really this big sales pitch, because these fish are all coming up from underneath and behind that bug. So we've got our rubber legs in there. Give that one little attitude pinch there. And we've got some of this polar chenille. We just got a couple of colors going just to give it a little bit of kind of stripes. We call it the Beetlejuice because of the stripes, kind of the stocking stripes, if you will. And it does have a very lanky walk to it. This is not something to be stripped. Like a drunk or a triple, as this thing would most certainly spin with that much of a pull. We're not looking for that. We're looking for a bob and a weave, a dimple back down to the surface, and then back up again, a little bit of slack to allow for a refloat. There's one. Oh. We got one of our little things in there, didn't we? How'd that get in there? There we go. And try that again. Usually I go like 3 to 4 wraps here before I put in that next set of legs. And all we're looking to do here is give some undercarriage profile for this bug. Not much. I always like taking out that puller too. Don't just wrap it and get clumps, you know, pull that stuff out. Give it a good snug, tighten it up. When you tighten it up too, it has a tendency to spread out really nice. You can kind of see what I do with my fingers there, getting all that over so I get a good bite. Make sure all that material's out. Oh, a little bit still in there. Where's my poker? Get out of there. There we go. And that's it now. Here we go. And you can be bold and try and get the legs in around this. But for a really clean finish, I don't mind coming off of that. Remember, use your GSB there. Give that a good snug. And you are using a shank here, so be sure you kind of hold your stuff so it doesn't move around too much when you make that maneuver. Second set of rubber legs. And I think these things look fantastic when this thing falls back. I mean, when you pull this forward, these rubber legs might kind of get a little plush into the material. But on the fall back, they open right up. And a lot of times you're going to get your bite not really on the general tension or even the stack men so much as everything post. That fish will notice you maybe from the deep and then come up and start sizing up. You guys ever watch those videos where those guys out in the ocean are dragging that fake seal around? And that shit awesome. And they're grabbing that seal from underneath, but you see that video they show. That video, that fake seal getting sized up from below it. And it's just neat to know how long that predator was back there in the consideration before it pounced. And I think those little bite triggers that you hit when you're doing these little mends and stacks really play well. And there's your 4 and 4 finishing here. And in there, finish with that. And presto, last legs. I can do better than that. There we go. We got our little trifecta there. We're going to get some collars going now. We're going to start with this natural because we always want to finish with that dark black. Black in the dark has a very strong silhouette. It just does. It pokes out, and I used to think it was just black was the strongest color. I came to find out it's claret. If you add the color red to black, it's actually stronger. This has all to do with their cones in their eyes and all that crazy stuff. But the way they pick up red underwater is a lot different than the way we do. And it stands out like a sore thumb. Given that good GSB bite there. Should be using my cool scissors, shouldn't I? Got a nice little shoulder stack there. Coming in for our first like little insurance here. What we're going to use here is kind of a smaller flank. And what we want to do here is cup that material downwards so it kind of splays down. And then we're going to give it some reinforcement because we're still thinking about paper airplanes here. We got our rudder in the back. We're going to have a wedge up front. And if I don't screw up that piece of flank, we're going to have a nice little set of wings on top. So what we've got here, I bet I can cut that with the thread. Let's see. Yep. Is we've got our two little butter knives in the back here, a little cougary top here, undercarriage, plus rubber legs. Second stage of flash. And again, this is something that is a tippy thing. We're keeping most of this flash except for that polar on the top end here. And you don't have to get terribly carried away here because you don't want something that's going to tangle and foul in the dark. So when you're making your flash cuts here, feel free to make them just shorter than you would have with that drunk that you can otherwise monitor with the lights on, because it's a lot different if you don't. And I will tell you, when we fish this pattern, you want to talk about faith in a freaking bug. So this is how strong, and I was just telling Matt, so the best day of brown trout fishing this man has ever known. Me and Brad Turner were fishing 2 spey rods below Bull Shoals Dam, somewhere out in the Black Abyss. And within 6 hours of fishing, me and him managed 34 brown trout, 20 inches or better. And we broke 24 inches 7 times. And I've caught some brown trout in a few different places, and I've had some really good days of brown trout in a few different places. And I've never, ever done that good any other time ever. That is absurd. And that amount of action relative to throwing spey rods, when you want to talk about faith, I was using this style pattern, and the bite was so strong, and they were so willing to give this audience that every cast that you didn't get a take, like a grab or a fish or something, you would strip all of your line in to check the bug to make sure it wasn't foul, because you just assumed that every time this damn thing hit the water, you were going to catch another fish. That's confidence you can't buy. Do I believe it was the fly? Not so much as the fly itself, maybe what the fly was doing. And that little bobbing thing allows a fish to not have to really over expose himself in that surface take and still have all that ability to come up and under, like those videos we were talking about with the sharks where they're sizing that. That's worth watching. Okay, so we got some guinea fowl over this to add a little color and support here. And then we're gonna come up with our last piece of the flasheroonie here, purple in the dark. Never a bad thing. Big fan of this Cascade stuff. Again, you don't have to get crazy with these amounts on these. You can just add just enough to kind of give it that back, so when the bug does tip, it does shimmer when it tips to that end. And we want a good pinch there. We want that stuff to be kind of rocked in there. So use your GSP like we were saying. You can see me pulling on that stuff. Stuff's awesome. Semper Fi came out with this nano silk. They might as well call it a food group. I mean, I don't know if I can even tie my dries without 50 denier now. It's just it's a very confident thread to tie with, is the best way to put it. And final stage of the flash, one little collar of bunny to wrap the package up. There's that good GSP tug. One full wrap should cover this. Make sure you get all your bunny out there. And we have a body of a juice in progress here. So yeah, we do fish this all summer long too in Michigan on single handers. Terribly effective option, especially when there's a moon. Everybody will agree that's done any amount of night fishing will agree that when you're fishing a moon, that the only really convincing spot to cast might be the shady corners. I will say though, once you're willing to go to a subsurface presentation, the moon matters less than it does if you're trying to make them bite a surface fly. So body in check here. We're gonna go for a couple of different colors here. Get rid of that. Making a mess here, Matt. And do we go with the purple or the brown? Oh, I think that's a purple. Oh, it's definitely a purple. And again, be creative with these. The mold of this, like a drunk, is kind of, you know, you can have fun with this. You don't have to get stuck in a rut. And again, I've thrown, I don't know, like 50 different versions of this thing out there. And I haven't had one not get knocked at some point. I mean, I would say if you could stay on one thing, stay on a dark spectrum, just helps them find it from the undercarriage up. And that's really your presentation. Did you see the way that cleans? Did you see the way that Varner cleaned? I mean, look at that. That Varner deer is just a clean, it even cleans better. There we go, getting our purple helmet going here, so to speak. And clean. One little off dog there. Get out of there. This one here, you don't have to be too generous, but you want to cover about 2/3, 3/4 of that bunny. And do remember, you are tying on a shank. So there's a little bit more to the spin than there would be if it was just a round hook. That round, it really spins nice when it's a single, but do take your time kind of spreading when you're doing it on a shank. I don't even think I can get that in. I got to use this end on this. And give that a good snug back. We do want a 3 pencil. That's a 3 full pencil deer on this one. Because again, when we give this thing the mend, we want this to have a little bit more float recovery than a standard drunk. Because we do want this thing to retreat to the top after the dig. And if you do fish this with long leaders, you can achieve 3 to 4 feet, maybe even 5 feet. Just because the wedge keeps going down on that low diameter, lets it go down. Do you need to fish that deep in the dark? I don't think so at all. In fact, I rarely fish deep water at all in the dark. Most of the fish at night are not in the deep. The deep is there to hold them during the daylight. As soon as the dark is there, it's kind of like musical chairs and the music's on and they can go move around again. And we're going to take our second pencil of deer here. That's wind. Storm's coming. What's the radar? Oh, sorry. Squirrel. Cleaning up our deer here. And second pencil going in. And give that a nice overlay there. Make sure you got a good spread. That second one is okay to kind of move around. And pack it in there. Get that nice balsa cork core. Always in mind that you are using a shank. And that's not in there quite as good as it is with a hook. See that? You gotta be straight on with that. There's enough room for another one. And ready for 3. And last cleanup here. If you're fishing these on a single hander, you could go to that 9-10 foot leader. Unlike a mouse leader, which I hear some guys, you know what, we should talk about that. Let's talk about mouse leaders in the dark. Why is everybody so wanting to stay so close to that mouse? You know, that water tension on that fly line is almost like get out of jail free cards for trout that are coming up. Remember that plume I was telling you about? That mushrooming of that good deer? Look at that way out there. But, you know, if I make a fish hit a bow tensioned mouse across with the line bowing across the current, that current hitting the line, no matter what I'm trying to do, to some level that current's drawing that mouse. No matter if I want it to go slow, stop, or speed up, it's still going to draw because that tension's there. Now, if a fish is coming up behind that thing and trying to suck and depress that thing and it goes to hoover that water, which is, Bassmaster that thing right on, suck it under, pull that mouse in, it's unable to do so as a result of our line pulling it out of that suction zone. So if I have a short amount of tippet or leader from the fly line to the mouse, naturally that fly line is going to be a lot of diameter and even more likely to pull it out. Now, if you fish a mouse or a Beetlejuice correctly, you force the fish to come from behind and underneath. And that is to say, your fly is now facing upstream with a stack. Instead of bowing across, you've stacked it to set that hook downstream. Now the fish has to come up from this area. At any point when a fish tries to hoover something that's just upstream, especially with you stacking it with the belly of line from the tip of the rod to the water, it's allowed to get that fly because it's being sucked back. The same fly with the bow tension is pulled out of that strike zone. So that's where you'll hear a lot of guys say, we heard 20 tonight, we got 2 or 1 or whatever. And that's just a lack of presentating the fly at the right speed. So the best way to put this is you want your bug facing upstream, no matter if it's subsurface or surface, to guarantee that that fish, when he does hoover, because at night commitment is almost pure. I mean, a lot of these things we ask them to do in the daylight, we're begging. It's out of their normal frame of feed to go after something during daylight hours, whereas a brown trout, being nocturnal, is far more willing to give something an audience in that dark. Always utilize all of your hook and shank. And yeah, so I would encourage, and I'm not saying you have to get crazy, but the lower the diameter of leader and tippet is near that fly at the moment of go, the more likely you own the fish. That's just a fact. When we do a mouse, we'll do a stack up and right or left, depending on your side of the river, to hold that mouse position up and force that fish to come in from behind and underneath. And we'll stack and then drop. And if you've ever seen rubber legs, when you drop them in the current after you've taught them, there's just a whole lot of silly going on there that's selling in simply not so pause with slack, so much as a general tension so that it can fall back. And that works. A lot of people go out there and throw it and they roll a lot of fish. A lot of people are still struggling to get that conversion rate up on mice. This is the short way there. This just takes the decision out of it and lets that kind of fish find its way. We have the body of the juice built here. We have an undercarriage, a little bit of flash, a lot of deer we got to clean up. Got our nice little butter knife rudder back here, little insurance on the back. Little flash and gleam there, but all in all, a very light fly with a naughty point. We're gonna do the same thing we did with the drunk. We're gonna cut a wedge here. And on this wedge, unlike the straight hook wedge, we wanna keep in mind that we wanna have plenty of top and very little bottom, but on this one, we can keep a little bit of extra top because again, we do want this thing to kind of find the surface again, or at least try and find its way back from that middle point of the column that you're drawing it from. Make sure your vise is nice and level before these insurance cuts. And push. Seeing the way that cuts even? I mean, everything about it is superior. It's not like this is kind of better, or, you know what I mean? This deer is just that good. I shouldn't be saying that. And we're coming around, saving our guards here. And right around here. And pop, pop, pop. And we're gonna go underneath now. Again, we don't like that guard down there, so. And let's pull that out just a little bit. We've got our sides getting messed up here. Get a good side here and basic wedge here. We're looking pretty good here before we take it out for the little extras. Get out of there, flash. And presto, presto. And now we're gonna do kind of that fine tune cut. Because that's enough on the vise. I'm trying to get as much done on the vise as I can because I think you guys can see it better instead of my fingers. I can see it better when it's in my hands. Okay, so general wedge kind of ready to go here. And we'll show you the pre-sculpt version of this. Again, this is I can't stress enough, I tied a couple of these in kind of a much smaller, very sculpin-like pattern for trout spay. And that's got more natural colors, obviously, like olives, tans, creams. Very, very sculpin-esque, a little bit of orange in there. And you can see this is our base. We got to clean it up, but this is what usually comes out of the vise. And then we're gonna take with our tool here, these stanfos are, I'll tell you, it's really quickened up my time as far as when I get these things, or how quickly I can get these done. And I'm gonna come around here, a little chip right there. That's pretty much gonna cover that. You don't wanna get too bold with those chin cuts on shanks either, because there's a little bit more mass underneath there. I am definitely gonna have to do this look really quick. Fuck, man, I'm right on. Shit. Let me smooth off this top, and we might be a little sooner than we reckoned here. Again, you always want to kind of hold that hook in your hand. Be surprised how much your brain is telling you where the flathead side of this is. And we're gonna snip. We're cleaning up just to see if we've got one more possibility of some razor cleanup. We're not sure yet. Oh, we're pretty close though. Let's get one more cleanup on the top here. Little chin shot here. And I'd say that about covers it. Okay, let's show you the semi-finished product here. Definitely different on shanks. So you've got your profile. Again, we're still staying kind of with that sculpin underbody theme there. And the hook is detached, and what this helps do is it helps anchor this bug. So I can dodge this thing forward, and because of the shortness in this wedge, if I had this hook attached to the hook, it would more likely spin. Having it down is kind of ruddering and giving this anchor so that you can dig it in and then it falls back. So that fall back is when these legs will open for you, because on the pull forward, it's not going to give you as much. I am going to cut these legs to length too. You want to have these things, and I usually use the polar chenille as a point of reference. As soon as you find all your rubber legs, you basically get all six in line, and you find your polar chenille there, and it gives you a little reference on where those are. And you don't want to cut these too short, but you certainly don't want them long, because if you got them too long, they'll be just plush the whole time to the bug. You do want that minor expansion. Heck, I almost pinwheeled the first two without. The rear one needs a cut. So we're gonna go just like that. And then you've got that nice spiky kind of wide open. And I get into some pretty crazy colors. We'll do hot pinks and oranges and stuff. But this is a nice dark one. This is a high color content. Nice little over the top, just a little bit of flash. You got the undercarriage, the wedge, the collar that you cut. A little bit of cleanup maybe there. No, that thing's kind of ready. Let's get some eyes on there. We'll clean it up and glue it. And the same thing here. Just give that a little bit of extra. So on the single-handed rods, I'd run these things at like 8 to 10 feet, depending on how big the watershed you're fishing in. But I wouldn't get too long to a point where if you're going for your stack mends, there's a slack that you have to strip up after the line kind of centers off. You don't want to be too far away that you're not getting any traction from that line. You just want enough that the fish can take the fly when it's kind of given to them, instead of that constant water tension. You know, like if you had drag on a dry fly that you were trying to get a hit on the surface, and even with a skating caddis or something, you're only going to be able to, you know, get so many conversions if you're moving the caddis. As soon as it stops, then that caddis is eatable. So this one can draw them with that little plunge and bump, but you certainly want to drop it back to him so he can just eat it. And I will tell you, the difference between a night fish and a day fish as far as the commitment rate, something you're never really going to have to worry about in the dark is commitments. The thing you have to worry about in the dark is making sure your hook point is in the best possible spot to find a home, because they are terribly willing after hours. They just are. That's night fishing as a whole. I mean, just the receptiveness, and especially fish that we would otherwise not, be able to even present. Here in Michigan, this isn't like out west. Out west, even when the fish isn't feeding, he's probably still down on the bottom of the trench, in which case he's probably still able to be nymphed, considered and all that stuff. He doesn't have some haunt, some undercut, some root wad, some cedar, something like that to disappear from. So as a result, they're just sitting out in the run. So that fish is exposed, and even though he's not maybe killing stuff or in that state of predation, he's still available to, fish to. In Michigan, that big fish isn't even out in the daytime. You get lucky getting those big times in the daytime, only because that fish is probably under an undercut so nasty, like Dr. Seuss's Bad Dream. That's the best way to put that. Okay, we're letting those eyes dry just a bit here. Kind of getting that eyeball, centering our whistles here. And again, the action of this bug is like when you mend, it dips in. It's going to dip in because of that tension flick. And then as soon as it does, it flares back. All this stuff opens up. And every time you mend it, remember, if a fish is tracking you and you stack it, he's going to move with it. The problem is he thinks it's retreating, and then it falls back to him. That causes an effect reaction when a fish has got to choose to either eat and deal with what's in front of him, what he's given an audience to, or he has to turn off. If he turns off, he has to accept the fact that he's spent all that energy and he's now not going to get a calorie. When you drop it back to him, it gives him a reason to snipe it. Okay, now whenever you're doing your heads here with this Solaris too, do keep in mind that this bunny and the end of the applicator brush and a little bit of Solaris, you might as well just call it like Velcro. So we're gonna pull this guy back, make sure all of that chin flashes, or all that chin bunny is out of there. We want to put on a gob, or a little gob here on the top, durability cement. Little insurance gap there. Big old hunk of freaking deer getting in the way there. Grab our applicator here. We're gonna tap, tap, tap. Just around the sides here. Ooh, got that bunny in there again. That's okay, because we're still gonna get the tap, tap, tap. And then underside, clean that up. Get your little wingtips. Nice thing about the shanks is you can't really plug up the eyes with the glue like you can with the... There we go. Boom, boom. And one little poke just to make sure. And one more of those. Bingo. Yeah, this doesn't have a rattle too. One thing about drunks is whenever you're casting in places that have rock banks, try and hit the logs or the grass, because the rocks and glass bead rattles are not as... It's not a smart play. You can kind of see that detachment too. It's nice having a hook free if that fish is bouncing into stuff, coming up for that kind of turnaround stuff. That hook's gonna get him. It's detached, and it's a great little anchor to keep this guy busy without spinning. Having that thing in the back is a nice anchor. And again, is this a strip thing? Not so much. I mean, when we fish this at night on a single hander, even when we stack, we do a slow, long draw to find any would-be pressures that we need. We don't give it into like that full stripping action. This is not that bug. This one's doing a lot without you doing anything to it. A little stack goes a long way with this thing. That wedge is already overset, but you can kind of see that profile again, kind of holding on that butter knife theme there where you have your little butter knife, and that creates that little bit of walk back there, that little rudder off the back. But I mean, a nice undercarriage. But yeah, not a bad bug. That thing catches fish at night like no other too. Yeah, that night, I'll never forget that night, ever. And I've had plenty of nights down there where you get a lot of fish over 20, right?
Right.
34. You want to know how good it was that night? You know those down jackets, those Sim Primaloft?
Puffies, yeah.
I had to go wash it.
Slime.
It was... It was disgusting how much was on there.